Hello everyone and welcome to another Starcraft 2 video. For this one, it is a continuation of the second season, I guess, of the Gauntlet tournament for the bot ladder. So last we left off, we had, let's see, it was Harvester Zerg succumbing to Lucid TJS. So that's Lucid Terran, built in JavaScript for the letters. And next up we have Popo. So if we take a look at Popo here, you can see it's built by player pbrief. Popo working version, that's always a good thing. Can play multiple lines using 15 possible builds this version. Using Season 3 maps version, wow, quite the version number. It hasn't been updated for quite a few months, which is a little sad because Popo was a big up-and-coming Zerg bot. Got pretty good pretty quickly. And we do need some more Zerg bots on the scene. So unfortunately he is left. Hopefully he's just taking a break though. But anyways, let's go ahead and hop right into the match. We do have it set up here. Oh, come on. Okay, there we go. Get rid of the frame while we're doing that. Okay, perfect. And here we go. So it's going to be a ZVT. So Popo, the challenger, spawning in the bottom right-hand position as the red Zerg. Meanwhile, on the top left, we have the returning champ, Lucid TJS, going for his second win. And putting down the first depot. And I don't hear any sound. There we go. Yeah, so it looks like it's going to be probably a hatch first build based on the amount of drones that are getting built. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, we have a depot into barracks, followed by an immediate gas geyser. Hatchery does go down. And I guess a drone scout? Or is it going to be a fast third? No, it's not the minerals for a fast third. So it must be a drone scout on the way across the map. Lucid immediately putting 2 into gas. Nope, 3 into gas. I take it back. As the barracks is just about to complete. Both workers are worker scouting now. Although Popo will arrive a little bit earlier and meanwhile has his own pool on the way. Looks like it was gas into pool. So we have immediately enough energy for, or enough gas for layer or speed, depending on what he wants to do when that pool finishes. SCV is pushing away the drone. Looks like he's going to chase them all the way across the map. It does simplify things when you code and see a worker come into your base just to put one of your SCVs on it. Otherwise, it could start annoying your production. You know, your SCVs are producing units, are producing structures. At the same time, though, it's probably good to have like a little bit of a range. Like once he leaves your natural base, just go back to your mineral line. Otherwise, this could happen. However, with that drone dying to build a extractor, the SCV is now freed up to go back home to mine. Meanwhile, an expansion coming down for Lucid, and a factory on the way. Rakcha on the barracks and Marines coming out. Doesn't look like any sort of semblance of a wall is built into this bot. Figuring out terrain can be difficult. I know this bot is the only JavaScript bot we have, so Lucid probably has to build his own mechanics for figuring out how to identify the ramp and how to structure walls, build structures around the wall. He also has a Protoss bot and a Zerg bot, so it's something he would only ever use in one matchup. Well, I guess you would kind of need it for Protoss as well. This is something good to do, especially if you're making a Zerg bot, is that whenever your workers aren't actively attacking, just take out the destructible stuff around you. Even taking out this guy can be handy. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, we do have a fast layer out of Popo and a Roach Warren. And a Hydra Den and an Evo Chamber. So plenty of tech, but not plenty of workers. Looks like his worker count is only 24 drones. Yeah, however, what's he been spending his resources on? He only has 4 lings too. I guess just really rushed out the tech really quickly and cut his drone count to do so. So he certainly didn't cut his drone count to build army. So not the best opener, however it is getting corrected at the moment as the drones are coming out and coming out hard. Meanwhile, Lucid up to a good amount of Marines here. Solid 10 and a Cyclone. That is enough to actually possibly do some damage here against Zerku. Literally is only droning. Only at 4 lings at the moment. If this pushed across the map, it would be big trouble for Popo. An unfortunately placed factory. We did see he built it here where there's no space for an add-on. And they must have had some code to float to a space where he can fit an add-on and ended up right in the middle of his own mineral line. So, yikes. Really screwing up the pathing to the 1 mineral patch, which isn't the biggest deal, but making it so 3 of 3 SCVs on the gas geyser is not full saturation is an issue. However, it doesn't look like Lucid's that interested in gas at the moment anyways, as he hasn't taken them at his natural as of yet. And in fact, been at 32 workers for quite a while. A little surprised that the worker count's not growing beyond 32. I guess that's close to full saturation when you got 2 bases and only 2 gas geysers. 42 would be max saturation, I guess, but still, we'd like to see that worker count continue to grow. He is building more workers now, however, and that's probably because he's planning on taking a 3rd base with this command center in the main. Inge Bay being put down as well. Reactor on the starport. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, lots of upgrades coming out. Both upgrades for Hydras as well as Hydralisk being produced. Up to a good amount of Roach Hydra. Just kind of hanging out in the main base. Love to drop a nuke right here. Stim has begun. 2nd siege tank. Oh, make that a 4th siege tank. It's about to hit the field. I kind of like the idea of starting with a Cyclone before siege tanks. Especially if this is ability uses in all 3 matchups. Because Cyclone's kind of really good when it comes to like one-on-one fights. So like when the army sizes are very small. And they can handle many different threats. You know, they can handle drops and air harassing units like oracles and banshees. They can handle, you know, even things like immortals they're good at when the unit counts are low. So it's a good safety unit to build first and then go into your tanks. Meanwhile, we do have a large attack coming streaming across, but kind of in a line, and that's just going to get absolutely hammered. 3rd hatchery about halfway done. It looks like the rest of this army is going to dwindle into its death as well. Tanks are actually on siege. That is a bit of an issue, so these Marines are not trading as well as they would have with like 4 siege tanks behind. But, however, with that said, that was still a one-sided attack, even though it wasn't as one-sided as it could have been. Orbital is producing units to the 3rd, but it's not actually floating to the 3rd. That seems like a mistake. Oversaturated now in his main and natural, so it'd really be nice to float this to the 3rd base. I wonder if that's a bug or a feature that wasn't instituted yet, or perhaps a reaction to getting attacked. It's like, hey, there's units here recently, maybe I shouldn't be floating down there. Ah, and here it comes. Tanks are losing a little bit of their buffer, but there should be enough. Yeah. Easily mopping that up. Units lost tab is about 4 to 1 in the favor of Lucid TJS. Looking quite good. Economies are somewhat similar. Again, Lucid's been a little bit rough on the SCV production. You could easily be at like 80 workers by now if you're producing nonstop. But 50 isn't that far behind 60. Popo himself has not been overly droning aggressively either, especially in the early game. However, at 60 workers, 62 workers now, he's in good shape to saturate 3 bases. Especially as the mineral patches are gone in his main, he's down to 2.5 bases. Actually oversaturated. This would be a nice time to take a 4th hatch. No sign of a move out yet from Lucid. I'm guessing it's going to be based on maybe some sort of supply count. Move out when you hit a certain supply. Looks like as soon as he gains vision of a unit, the tanks unsiege and try to move in range of that unit. But if he just waits, the units will come to him. Yeah, see the siege tanks in the back unsiege and try to move forward. So it ends up a lot of the siege tanks aren't actually getting involved in the fight. I think with my tanks what I do is I don't unsiege them, and that's just no units within like 15 range. Even though siege tanks can only shoot, can't even remember, 11 or 13, I give them like an extra buffer, like assuming those units can walk in on them. And specifically it's any units that can move within 15 range. So if it's like a burrowed lurker or a siege tank or a liberator or something like that, then it's still okay to unsiege and move forward. But if it's units like this, hydras and roaches, I just assume that they'll kind of eventually come into siege tank range. And even if they don't come into siege tank range, I don't want to be unsieging all my tanks in front of a major army. It's just too dangerous. Wait until they attack or until they leave, and if they don't do either, just stay sieged up, or like, you know, to provide the safety. Anyways, the siege tank count is up to a whopping 9. 4th base is complete now for Lucid. As the worker count is still a little on the low side of 57, but you know, that's not a terrible number. Especially as the main base has down to 3 patches here. It's only really on 3.5 bases. Kind of an awkward place to fight here as he has no vision. Only now granting the vision, but losing a whole bunch of tanks that aren't being defended as he's moving across the map himself. A little bit weird of a kind of a base trade scenario here, I guess. Medevac abandons these Marines. Yeah, so kind of a head start on the base trade there for Zerk. However, now Terran has arrived to the other side of the map. Another siege tank going down, and these Marines trickling out 1 and 2 at a time, not doing so well. Liberator, if you can get those 2 hydras down, could be a game changer here. But unfortunately only able to injure 1. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, ooh, kills some enemy and then heads back home, which is not good. Again, decision making is very tough when it comes in the bot world. Mechanics is where bots can shine. Decision making, there's just so many different factors. It's so hard to script. Liberator's got a nice position here though. And cleans it up. Still well ahead on the units lost tab. Let's actually switch it back to production. And yeah, lost some workers probably and his reinforcement line, but didn't lose a base. Neither player actually lost a base. So can you really call it a base trade when no bases are being traded? Meanwhile, Lucid's 4th base is up. It would be nice to morph this into a orbital or a planetary. Roach is heading across the map this time. A nice little siege line here. Hopefully at least these front 2 siege tanks don't unsiege at the start of the fight. That would be nice. Oh, but are they going to base trade again? Wow, that Lucid army is looking really scary. How many medevacs is that too? Yeah, 12 medevacs in there. Actually abandoning this base, that's kind of cool. Nice little functionality there. Let's see if the base is smart enough to lift off, although there's... Yeah, if it lifts off, there's only actually 1 Hydra to take it out. But no, it's coming back home. Going to try to flank the Terran. Wiping out the freshest base of Popo. So many siege tanks that even though there's barely any support for these tanks, just 1 Marine and 1 Marauder, they're able to clean it up. However, they do get all caught on siege as the Roaches arrive. So I think the Roaches are going to be able to take out most of these tanks, but what is going to take out all these Liberators and Medevacs and Bio? He has 1/1 upgrades, Combat Shield, Stim. Yeah, tanks are down, but yeah. Not looking good. There is a 4th hatch on the way for Popo, but so late. No workers there. And it appears like Lucid is going to just walk over Popo from this point forward. Yeah, so interesting game. The bot world is very cheesy, so it can be hard to really dedicate yourselves to building workers, but I think both these bots could use some huge could be so much stronger if they dedicate a little bit more to keeping that worker production going especially hard. For Terran, just kind of wanted non-stop workers. For Zerg, obviously there's more decision making, as you do have to spend some larva on army. But yeah, a little more dedication to the drones and less on rushing out all that layer tech. Can get you a nice economic lead early on. But yeah, beautiful game out of Lucid. I really like the composition. I could see Lucid TJS being a bot that could go on for quite a while. I'm trying to remember, like, I haven't casted a game for a while in this series, but yeah, the armies were looking pretty ragged in previous matches in this tournament, and this one looks very solid. Tanks, medevacs, good bio mix, upgrades, liberators even. The tank micro has some adjustments that could be used, but the composition itself is looking super strong, and I can't imagine a bot attacking into this and it going well for them. So perhaps Lucid will actually get a nice little run on the ladder. We'll have to see. But with that, let's hop out of this game. Alt F4 it and take a look back here. So with Popo going down to Lucid, Lucid has won 2 in a row, and now it is going to be time for a team kill, as Lucid will be facing Lucid PJS. And I believe his Protoss spot was his first spot, which probably means it's his most advanced of the 3. However, the Zerg bot is higher ranked. They're all pretty close in rank, actually. Build order based bot only holds a macro build Stalker Colossus composition at the moment. Good composition, however. Fix a bug where build order is stuck at 76 supply. Yeah, that's a good thing to fix. It's funny, in the API they call it food, not supply. So I can see that's carried over to the authors. A lot of authors aren't actually StarCraft 2 players. So it's interesting, like, what they make of the game, in that they're coding a bot to play a game, but they don't have any preconceived notions of like how the game should be played, right? So you see some new innovative stuff and you know, some unoptimized stuff. Improve resource management, fixed wall calculation. Oh, there you go. So at least this Protoss bot knows how to calculate a wall. Good stuff, good stuff. So I guess we'll just hop into this one. So Lucid PJS is going to be the challenger. Lucid TJS is the going for the hat trick of 3 straight wins. And either way, Lucid's going on, and Lucid's getting knocked out. So just waiting as we hop into this replay. It is going to be on Romanticide. And yeah, that's a map that's been in the map pool for quite a while for us human players. We had that downtime where Blizzard kind of abandoned SC2, but before Shopify kind of and ESL kind of jumped in to save us and bring us some new maps. Let's switch to this mode and that, and we're good to go. Okay, so spawning in the top left, it is the challenger. It is Pajamas, Lucid PJS. Meanwhile, in the bottom right, we have the returning champ. It is TJS of the Lucid variety. Lucid is one of these authors that we haven't seen him like really high ranked yet in terms of like ladder, but I can see what he's working on, and I think his bot is actually much more advanced than many bots out there. He's getting like all the basics down. He's not cutting any corners, so I think he's going to get himself in a state where he can up this bot to a very competitive level quite easily. Kind of like the opposite of my bot, where I haven't built a lot of the basics, but I kind of know what's important, as I know Starcraft 2 fairly well. So I'm able to like take some shortcuts and do the stuff that really matters and leave the other stuff for another time. But just like little things, like he sends out the SCV before he has the money for the depot. That's something I haven't done yet. I just kind of, when I have money for a depot, I build it. And then that's the point where I send out the SCV, because there's so many more factors if you send out the SCV early. It's like you kind of have to calculate how far it is away, and then how much resources will you mine during that time, so you know to send it at the right point. And then you got to make sure you don't spend that resources on something else while the SCV is traveling out there. A lot of factors. So this SCV was chasing the worker for life again, but it did lose it in the fog of war here. Meanwhile, TJS's worker, it's kind of interesting how both these bots are going to be copying each other in their behaviors, as they both have probably like the same base framework behind them, built by Lucid there. More or less the same build we're seeing out of TJS here. So again, kind of cutting the workers, which I don't like, but at the same time, getting up his expansion. Starting the factory. Yeah, it was also interesting how he didn't build any Marines until he started the factory. So he has prioritization. It's like, okay, I need to build a factory, so kind of cut off my other production until I can. It wasn't perfect because it wasn't the minerals stopping him from building the factory, it was the gas, which meant he could have been building Marines that whole time, but I do like how that logic's built in there. Just needs a little adjustment. Meanwhile, PJS, what has he got here? Expansion, double gas, couple gateways, and a warp gate is on the way. Warp gate's actually pretty far done for 3 minutes and 30, isn't it? I don't really know, but you might have actually been chronoing warp gate a little bit. Continuing the pro production, which is nice. Meanwhile, TJS is not doing so hot on the worker production. And actually floating a ton of minerals. I'm not sure what's going on here. Like, he's still producing 2 Marines at a time. That's good. But 1,200 minerals, yikes. Did Lucid break? Okay, there's the orbital finally. So Tech Lab, orbital, and more Marines. Still no workers being built. No third command center. It is a little bit early for a third command center, but man, if you got 1,200 minerals, you gotta spend that somehow. You're not gonna build more barracks to build a third command center. Factory's a little idle as well. Starport on the way. Another gas going down. But where? Oh, that's only the second gas. Okay, interesting. Stalker count is getting a little bit scary here, up to 7 stalkers. I think with high ground, the Marines will be able to handle it. Nice little pick off of the observer. Yeah, that's a good enough Marine count to handle that stalker count. But economy-wise, way behind is Lucid TJS. Still stuck at 19 workers. Not producing any of his main for minutes on end. Natural was idle, except for like after 2 minutes it built an orbital and then went idle again. So I gotta imagine this is most likely a bug. I wonder if he even has some sort of logic like, oh, I don't need mineral intake because I got this massive mineral float, so don't bother building workers. That is logic that could make sense and like to yourself if you don't think about it too hard. But it's actually counterproductive. First Solar Mortal is out. So Immortal Stalker is not going to fare too well against a massive Marine count. However, he did say in his bio that this is a Stalker Colossus army. Oh yes, and here comes the Colossus now. Thermal Lance on the way, and this will just tear the Marines apart. Now, against a large siege tank count, however, now we got some answers to the Colossi, even a single Viking. But that large siege tank count is not really on the way, and still no workers being produced. No mules getting called down. Yeah, something weird is going on here with Lucid. Sorry, with with the Terran Lucid. We did not see this last game. I don't think this is correct logic. Okay, worker count has started again. So something I think broke Lucid, and then you just kind of snapped out of it. All of a sudden he's like, oh shoot, I got 1,200 minerals, let me spend all of it. He throws down some extra barracks, throws down engineering base, starts building SCVs again, calls down all those mules. So I'm guessing he was like throwing exceptions every frame because of something. And then whatever that something was kind of ended. So now he's back to being his old self. So unfortunately that did give his counterpart a big lead, as Lucid PJS is taking his third base and has a double the worker count lead almost. And I may have spoken too soon, as TJS is continuing to not build SCVs. Nope, there's 1. 2. Okay, there they come again. Taking a little add-on swap, but swapping all the way across. One base to another. That is something I should build into my bot, is swapping add-ons. It's something that can really speed up a build. And that's important, especially in the early game. And it's also something that a bot can exploit that a human can't, is that throughout the entirety of the game, you can be swapping add-ons. Usually that's something like a Terran does. You know, they output 1-1-1, and then they're just kind of building add-ons and swapping around, but once the game actually gets going, they stop doing that. But for bots, the mechanics involved is fine, as they have unlimited APM. So you can do that all game. And if you can speed something up by 30 seconds, that means you can get out units a little bit quicker. And if you can get out units a little bit quicker, you can be a little bit greedier. You can either make your your timing attacks even stronger, or you can be even greedier if you're going for a longer macro game. Let's take a look at the army supplies here. Fairly even, about 1,000 gas larger for the Protoss. So yeah, that is a lot of Colossi. I don't see this going well for the Terran. I imagine the siege tanks will eventually deal with the Colossi, but not before the Colossi kill all the Marines. Which means it's going to be like Stalkers and Immortals versus siege tanks. Which seems pretty good for the Immortals. But I could be wrong. It also depends whether the siege tanks will even focus fire the Colossi. Say they're shooting at Stalkers, then the Colossi live, and then, yeah. And we do know that there is some micro problems with the siege tanks here, right? So even if the Protoss walks up this ramp, we know that some of these siege tanks in the back are going to be unsieging and then sieging up again. So it's not like he's going to have like 7 tanks blasting everything at the start of the fight. Looks like PJS is considering double expanding, taking his 4th base, and something could be going on here. Combat Shields is about to complete, however, with 2 medevacs on the way, so TJS is at least getting that composition that looks so scary from its previous matches, but doing so from a massive deficit, and that composition isn't that scary when you're facing 5 Colossi, because it's very Marine heavy. Oh man, but that is a lot of tanks. Tanks are very good against Colossi. I guess it really depends on how the battles are might code, right? Will the tanks be part of the battle? Or will all the bio get shredded before the tanks can siege up? Worker count for TJS is slowly rising. I mean, we're up to 42 now. Again, not enough to saturate the 2.5 bases that he has. But, you know, not so little that you would call the game over. Okay, here's a massive attack coming into the siege tanks. Just what we wanted. However, the bio's coming down the ramp to fight, and none of the tanks are in range. Okay, now they're unsieging to move forward, but at this point the bio could all be gone. Okay, retreating. Sieging up again. Okay. Alright, not bad position for the siege tanks. Unfortunately, most of that bio died so quickly. All the fodder is gone. 2 tanks left with 1 Marine. And it looks like the Stalkers is what was getting shot, so the siege tanks do not have any target fire, they just kind of shoot whatever. Mortal does go down to a siege tank over here. However, I think this is all she said, all she wrote. We have 4 Colossus remaining. 5th back here working on some destructible rocks. SCV is getting chased by Stalkers. That puts the Terran back to like barely 1 base worth of economy. 3 mineral patches here. This base is mostly getting repaired, not mined from. Tank stick gets set up in a nice little spot here. We do have a Viking picking away at the Colossi. Not much bio here, which actually means the Colossi aren't that useful. Just a trickle of Marines means the splash damage from this Colossi is kind of useless. So nice, really nice engagement there for TJS, but again, we do have a 5 base economy. Things are back to normal on the 2 bases that remain. But down to 10 mineral patches. Definitely don't need any more medevacs. Each Marine is going to have its own individual medevac assigned to it. There is something cool to be said for when that happens. Obviously, you want a good ratio, like, you know, 6-7 bio units for every medevac at least. But it is fun when you have like 8 medevacs and 10 Marines. It feels like in certain situations those Marines just never die. Like if they get stormed, every single one of those Marines will be healed through the storm. Trying to take out this observer, but does not have the energy for a scan. Doesn't stop him from chasing it though. But that does leave a window for a massive army to come in. The idiot magnet drew him out of position from the high ground. Not that he had any chance of holding off this army anyways, but wow, that's a lot of stalkers. And I think at this point we're going to go ahead and speed this up. As TJS will not finish the hat trick, it does get... Or will it? Beat the Harvester, Popo. Was there a third victory in there? I don't think so, yeah. So, 2 wins out of TJS. I guess we'll double check that. I'm going to hop back out again. But this time is the Protoss version of Lucid moving on. And that's kind of what I expected. As its Protoss is his main bot, I would guess. However, I think a lot of it came down to just something really weird happened to the Terran version of Lucid, where it just completely stopped making workers on, even though I had 2 bases and one was completely unsaturated, the SCV count just completely stopped. So that was a little rough. Luckily the medevacs do survive. They'll be able to live another day. But let us hop out of here. And we will take a look at what is going on. We got, ooh, whoops, what happened there? Yeah, so let's just go back and we'll take a look at the ladder here. So that was the number 49 bot, Lucid PJS, becoming the new king of the hill. Moving on against the last and final team kill for Lost Lucidity, and that is the Zerg bot. So, okay, I take it back. It said first Node.js bot in AI Arena. So apparently the Zerg bot was not only Lucid's first bot, but the first bot, period, for Node.js on AI Arena. And yeah, I think Lucid's still the only one to have Node.js bots on AI Arena, even though there's other JavaScript authors. I see them in the Discord channel. I don't think I've ever seen them put anything public into the ladder yet. So either they lost interest or they're still working on getting their bots into a stronger state before they attempt the competitive world. Only holds a macro build, Zergling Roach Hydra composition at the moment. Good solid composition to make though. I mean, it's more of a mid-game army, but it's obviously it's something you can just use basic micro on. You don't have to worry about like the craziness of using like Vipers, for instance. These are units that can just kind of attack and kite. Refining army movements and working on the performance. Recent changes as gas threshold for non-build order training. As gas threshold. Not sure what that means. Maybe added gas threshold for non-builder training. Anyways, improve early game push logic where Zerglings will wait for roaches if outpowered. Fixing. Okay, so yeah, when you move across the map and all the lings get so far ahead of everything else, don't let them die off to the enemy army. Have them wait for the reinforcements of the roaches. Fixing scouting Zergling positions. Repo link. Okay. Yeah, So I see no reason not to hop right into this. Actually, let's take a quick look back at the competition. I just want to remember how many wins that Lucid TJS got. So they beat Harvester, beat Popo, lost to P. Yeah, so just got the 2 wins. Yeah, so another Lucid on Lucid team kill going on here. And let me load that one up. This one will be on, as it loads, Lightshade. It says Lightshade AIE instead of LE, so it's like the AI edition, which is something built by Scarlet, which is something which especially built map in the map editor, which brings our games up to the current balance patch that we have in SC2, because Blizzard kind of stopped supporting the Linux version of SC2. It's stuck on an old version back when Infested Terrans were still a thing. So we kind of have to mimic the current balance patch. But we're there. That's good. And last night's Probots, actually, we saw the first battery overcharge, which is neat. Nice to see some of this new features that are in the game. Switch to this mode. Let's... Sorry, no one saw that. And we'll start the game. So the challenger is the Red Zerg, Lucid ZJS, spawning in the bottom right. Meanwhile, in the top left, we have the returning champ, Lucid PJS, as the blue Protoss. So, Overlord is crossing the map. Drones being built is followed by an Overlord. And first pylon is down. Looks like another probe is attempting to make a gateway. Is that what's going on? Yes, there you go. And we got a hatch first out of Lucid ZJS. Looks like he sends out his workers a little bit too early to produce these structures, but better too early than too late. You do want to get it down right away, so you don't want to be arriving at like 375 minerals, because, you know, getting things down quickly is good. Arriving too early, you miss out on a little bit of mining. Like 10 minerals worth of mining maybe, but at least you're getting the structure down ASAP. Followed by a gas, and then finally a spawning pool. Meanwhile, a second gateway and a cybercore out of Lucid PJS. Looks like it's going to be a one base build, at least for a little while. Which would be strong against any sort of Zergling aggression. Zerg is probably the toughest bot to get going at a high level, in that the decision making of when to drone and when to build army, like anything when it involves decision making, is very tough for bots, and that's a really key decision for Zerg, right? If you're not building drones, you just fall so far behind economically, and if you are building drones where you're not supposed to be, you're just going to end up dying to the first attack. So not the toughest thing in the world for a human when you play a game, to just kind of get an idea of what your opponent's up to and know when to drone and when to build army. But again, something very difficult to script. First Overlord. Ooh, it's not going to get there. It does get picked off as it attempts to scout the natural base. Similar framework, both working on rocks. This is a nice feature, especially on a map, say like Blackburn, where one of the expansions is behind the behind rocks. You kind of want to dig your way in. I can see this backfiring though, especially like sometimes maps have like, say like a backdoor entrance into your main base. I've seen that before, but it's rocks you gotta break through. So if you're like a Terran and you make a second route into your own base against a Zerg that could go against you. Looks like ZJS is trying to throw down some sort of structure to the front. I'm not sure what it is. A spine crawler, perhaps? A little indecisive on when to attack with these lings. Oh, that's... yeah. Oh, no, you really want to commit. Stalkers are not that good versus Zerglings. Just go. Perhaps they're trying to get out of the way to make space for that Evo chamber that keeps trying to produce. Pulled the workers help in the fight, then decided against it. Yeah, so a little bit of micro issue there, but did continue to produce things, so at least he would be fully safe against a 4 stalker push there. And back to droning once again, so that was nice to see. And that Evo chamber did get down somewhere. There it is. Roach Warren's complete, Spore going down in both mineral lines. Meanwhile, PJS does have a nice little lead. He is up 3 workers. Expansion is done. Robotics producing an observer, followed by a robo base. So we're probably going to be seeing Colossus again. Oh yes, we did read that this bot is a Stalker Colossus bot. And we read that this bot, the Zerg one, is a Roach Hydra Zergling bot. So what composition's better? I think Colossus would work very well against Roach Hydra Zergling. But the Roaches and Hydras kind of get free shots if the Colossus are shooting the Zerglings, and if they're not, the Zerglings work very well against the Stalkers. So without Zealots in the mix, to buffer a little bit, and no Immortals to deal with the Roaches, I could see this being good for Zerg, especially in smaller numbers. Once the Protoss gets closer to maxing out, obviously, that will be speed death trying to run in there with Roach Hydra Zergling. But again, a lot of it does come down to the economy. If Zerg can get ahead economically, it won't really matter too much if the composition doesn't favor him. The sun's peeking through the clouds. One sec for me. All right, that's a little better. Army size looking somewhat even, a little bit in the Protoss favor. However, it is a lot of Stalkers, which does not perform well versus Zerglings. And Roach Zergling would probably even be better than pure Zergling, as pure Zergling would have difficulty with surface area. So I could see an attack, despite the lower supply, actually going well for ZJS right now. Obviously the Queens won't be able to participate in the fight, but yeah, I think Roach Zergling could walk over this. No upgrades. Any upgrades here? I guess just speed. And +1. Yeah. This could go well. Still no Colossi on the field, so all depends if he wants to attack or not. I think we've seen that all versions of Lucid are a little bit on the passive side. They wait until they hit a hefty supply count and then go for the attack. Which isn't a bad idea. I mean, if you don't have a good logic for when it's smart to attack and when it's smart to retreat, then a good default logic to have is just, you know, make a massive army and then go. Because a massive army will almost never perform poorly, where going with a haphazard smaller army takes much more decision making, whether that's a smart idea or not. Stalker count is getting quite large. Zerglings are very good against Stalkers, but of course as the numbers get larger and larger, it swings more towards in favor of the Stalker, as the Stalker does not have to worry about surface area the way the Zerglings do. Interesting location for a Hydra Den. But decent creep spread coming out of Lucid ZJS here. We've definitely seen better than bot world. Bots do have the capability of spreading creep as good or better than the best pros in the world, as you can basically set up that you, as soon as a Kuma becomes available, you spread it. still no extra gas geysers for PJs here, and that's a little concerning because Protoss, the power of Protoss really comes in the gas, and you can see by his resourcing actually. In fact, by not taking those gas geysers, I think it's prevented him from making Colossi, because he's probably just warping in Stalkers whenever he can, which means he never gets the required gas to build any Colossus, which is what he really needs here. So yeah, it's similar, I guess, to the bug we saw, well not bug, but to the problems we saw with the Terran version of Lucid in the previous match. Only the Terran version was worse, it didn't saturate the minerals either. But it'd be nice to see 2 more gas geysers. I think for Terran it can make sense not to take gas, because Terran can do so well with mineral heavy armies. But Protoss, you really, the more gas the better. Because gas gets all that really juicy Protoss units, the Colossi, the Immortals, the Storm, the Dark Templar, the Carriers, the Tempest, like all their good stuff is really heavy on the gas. Even Stalkers aren't, you know, that gas cheap. They're not a very gas expensive army, but at the same time, you know, they're not the same as like a Marine or a Marauder or a Zealot. They do have a decent gas charge, and obviously enough that he's not able to produce any Colossi. Up to 3,000 minerals. I think I get easy with my bots on expanding. Since all my compositions are so gas heavy, you just end up floating minerals. And when you end up floating minerals and you have some sort of logic to spend that on expansions, things just kind of work out well. You know, you just produce units. When you can expand, you do expand. For other compositions that were more mineral intensive, you're going to need some sort of logic of like, okay, when should I expand? And when you should expand, let's save up the minerals for that expansion and stop spending it all on Stalkers, for instance. But yeah, that's not an issue here. You can certainly afford that sort of thing. With that said, though, this Stalker count is pretty massive. Let's see. Ooh. Interesting split up of this army. I don't know about this. Okay, they're coming back to rejoin, but it's going to be such a piecemeal attack. Okay, finally now major portions coming in from the north. What's going on? Are they going to attack or no? Mostly just retreating. Let's zoom this out, get a better idea of what's going on. Yeah, just a lot of hesitancy out of the Zerg. He doesn't want to take the fight, but he's not retreating back to his main base, so... Okay, finally an engagement on this side, and the numbers are pretty decent. That's a lot of Hydras. Hydras do quite well versus Stalkers. They don't take that bonus damage to Armored. But the other side is still being very hesitant. Getting little attacks in here and there. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's situations where this sort of micro is a good thing. I'm not sure exactly the decision making on that pulling back idea. He might have been waiting for his army to gather together before he attacks. Which makes sense if the Zerglings ran ahead, for instance. But if your armies just split up like this, like some of the armies over here, some of the armies over here, some of the armies coming across the map, then they're never actually going to group up. So, yeah, you still got to commit to that attack somewhere. Nice little flank here, though. Yeah, and just a huge composition advantage. Stalkers are really, you know, they're jack of all trades, master of none, right? They can do everything, but they don't do anything well. So it's not like you want an army of pure Stalkers. Unless you can somehow abuse the mobility with their speed and blink to kind of get pot shots and run back, but you really don't want to be taking straight up fights. Now it's PJ's turn to do some weird movement micro. Not getting in the attacks that it could have. I guess that makes this matchup really fair. If one bot is making a major mistake, there's a good chance the other bot has the same issue because they're both using a similar code set. But yeah, just a massive composition lead. Not only was Lucid ZJS's army maybe bigger or the same at least, but the composition was just stronger. Could have been a whole different story if it did have those 5 Colossus like it should have. But unfortunately, PJS did kind of throw by not taking the gases as natural. Much as TJS threw in the previous game. These would probably be really close matchups actually if these bots, between all the Lucid bots, if they're all functioning at peak performance. But with that said, I mean, I think we got the best Lucid out of here, right? This is the original Lucid bot, so it's probably the one that's most advanced. This game looked very solid. Solid build order, kept the drone count at a decent level, and like what we saw with Popo, continued to expand. Structure placement was a little wonky, but and the micro was a little bit wonky, but everything else is really good. Really nice macro, good composition, good commitment to the attack. Even though the micro was not committing hard, the idea of attacking and bringing reinforcements and whatnot, I liked. So we could see some advancement of Lucid quite a bit further on the ladder. We'll have to see. Let's jump back to the ladder picture here. And we're probably going to call this the end of the video, but let's see how we left off here. So we made it through the layer of Lucids, and now we're going into the layer of Zergs. So Lucid ZJS is the champ who will be moving on to face Paul. Paul is the author, a veteran Zerg author. Really likes his Nidusworm play. But has some solid macro builds as well, and is actually a co-author of the now, I can safely say the now best Zerg bot out there called Eris. The other co-author being Rasper, who built Spiny, who is arguably the best Zerg, right? So the best Zerg is either Eris or Spiny, but Paul is a co-author for one of them. Followed by a house bot, which I decided that we'll skip the house bots. And then just Lassay's Lizzie. And yeah, we'll move on from there. Do you see some familiar names here? Sharp PvP Easy. I remember he had a nice little tournament run not too long ago. Snowbot being one of the Zerg bots who made it into pro bots. We're getting through. So 64 bots were active at the end of the last season, and we are up to 45. So we're about a third of the way through. But yeah, I'm kind of putting out these videos around the same time the pro bots videos are coming out. So if you want more bot action and you want to see the highest level bot action that we got, you can head on over to ES Champs channel. I'll keep the description in the link. And they will every Thursday have a live stream on YouTube, but then obviously the VODs will be on YouTube as well, where you can watch the tournaments for the top 16 bots. Best of threes, I think it all is. There's going to be a losers bracket or a lower bracket, so you got to be like double elimination, and then a best of 7 to end the whole thing off. And I think after the finals, there'll even be some humans versus bots content, so that'll be cool as well. So with that, we'll call it the end of this video. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'm out of here. Goodbye.